Well, this is a series that we used to do quite frequently on the channel, especially during the offseason. And because a lot of these teams are no longer playing, they're no longer in the playoffs, they're no longer actually doing stuff, I think it would be appropriate to start revitalizing the 1 Year Later series, talking about prospects that had made their debuts in the NHL, talking about guys that were drafted in the 2021 NHL Entry Draft. You know the drill, it's a pretty cut and paste kind of formula. We find players to talk about from previous NHL entry drafts and we say, hey, this is where they are 2 years later or 4 years later, or in this case, because the 2021 draft was last year, 1 year later. Let's talk about the first overall pick from the 2021 NHL Entry Draft, Owen Power, and where he has gone since being drafted in that first overall spot. Now, Owen Power is a really interesting player because ever since, 2020, there were already people going out there and hyping this guy up as a potential top pick. Now, for the majority of the late 2010s and early 2020s, Owen Power wasn't really supposed to be the quote-unquote first overall guy. You had Aatu Räty that was supposed to be the first overall pick. People pegged him as that number one talent for years heading into 2019 and 2020 and 2021, but his draft stock really fell down during the 2020-2021 season. As a result, the stage was wide open for other talents in other parts of the world to take over the first overall spot. You had some people going out there saying that Matty Beniers, fellow player for the Michigan Wolverines, should have gone first overall. In prior years, you had fans getting hyped up for guys like Guenther, you had Brandt, Clarke in that conversation, Luke Hughes. There were so many players that could have gone at the top of this year's selection, but Owen Power was the one that ultimately went first. Why was that? Well, it's not necessarily because Owen Power had the best numbers at the Michigan University Wolverines system in 2021. He had 16 points in 26 games played, which isn't super amazing, but there was a big body of work behind him and a big frame that he was supporting as well, plus the skills and intangibles that scouts really liked. Owen Power today is 6'6", 214 as a left-handed defenseman. He's 19 years old, and he was one of the older players in the entire 2021 draft. Long story short, NHL scouts looked at the potential of Owen Power, the fact that his skating was so smooth and his puck-carrying ability was so fluid. This was a guy that if he maxed out to his potential, he had a Victor Hedman-like number one defenseman ceiling. Now, there were a lot of concerns about Power's game as well. Complications with when he would decide to go out there and join the rush, complications as to how he would defend in his own zone. These were things that needed to be ironed out, and they were conversations that needed to happen with NHL teams in order for teams to feel comfortable having Power at the first overall position. While he might have been seen as the first overall pick in 2021, this was a player that a lot of people believed would not have gone first overall had he been eligible for any of the previous drafts. This is because there were more questions with Power than there had been for other first overall picks. There was a lot more work that needed to be done. It's why 2021 had probably the most polarizing top pick that I've seen in the past few years. I'm only 21 years old. I've only been following the NHL draft as religiously as I do since 2012, 2013-ish, and in all those years, the McKinnon draft, the Ekblad draft, the McDavid draft, etc., I've never seen a first overall selection that was as wide open as this year's draft. Sure, Nolan Patrick was supposed to go first overall in 2017, but he lost the title to Nico Hischier, but that was more expected, especially towards the end of that season. In 2021, it felt like the gap between all the other players, from Beniers to Hughes to Power, was a lot slimmer than, let's say, Jack Hughes to Kirby Dach, or Connor McDavid to Dylan Strome. However, when it came to the absolute ceiling, I could totally understand why Owen Power was the guy. It's just, to me, and in the eyes of a lot of other scouts whose opinions I value online, it appeared that there were more uncertainties with Owen Power than there were with other first overall picks of the past. However, give it a year in the NCAA and Owen Power goes back for his sophomore season. He absolutely takes a complete step up and changes the way he plays the game. He went out there and scored himself 32 points in 33 games played. Now, that's a huge, significant jump from what he did last season. He doubled the points in only 7 more games. It's fair to be concerned that he only had 3 goals in his NCAA season. In fact, he also had 3 goals in his draft year as well, especially considering the cannon of the shot that he does possess. But Owen Power really did go out there and show himself off in the best way possible during his sophomore season, to the point that a lot of Sabres fans said, yeah, okay, even though he was a first overall pick, even though he went back to school, this is a guy that's definitely worked on his game, and all the stuff that he said when he got drafted, that he wants to go back to Michigan, that he feels like he has more to work on and more to improve upon, it really does feel like he nailed those aspects down. He was a lot more confident and a lot more offensively potent when taking the puck in the zone. He was a lot less defensively irresponsible, and there was a lot more stability in the game that he played. Plus the fact that he was as smooth of a skater as he had been in the past, there was a lot to like here for a sophomore Owen Power. Now, sure, there is the argument that says, well, he was playing on a very stacked team. And I'm not going to go out there and dispute that. I mean, look at the roster of the 2021-2022 Michigan Wolverines: Beniers, Brisson, Luke Hughes, Borderlow, Johnson. I mean, Owen Power was 6th overall in points, and he was a point-per-game player, so yeah, this was a really good team. After his season wrapped up, though, with the Wolverines, he signed a contract, burning off the first year of his ELC in the process, which I guess isn't really too big of a concern for Buffalo Sabres fans, considering the guy was 1st overall. He suited up for the Sabres in 8 games, and he had himself actually 3 points, 2 goals, 1 assist. One of the goals, the first one of his career, was a very nice joining on the rush type of play. And right away in the NHL, you could see that Owen Power was a guy that definitely had the precision and revision of a second-year NCAA player. It was a really smart choice, I think, for him to go back to the NCAA and iron things out before getting thrusted to the Wolves in the NHL. The Buffalo Sabres were not really the best team anyway, so it's not like this guy would have been given sheltered minutes, quote-unquote. All minutes would have been kind of tough for a brand new NHL rookie. Compiled with this, the World Junior performance, where Owen Power went out there and had 5 points in 2 games, he was absolutely astounding for Team Canada as one of the best players in the very limited World Junior sample that we had. Now, the World Juniors are going to go back on in August this year, so hopefully we'll see Owen Power get another chance to don the red, white, and what is it, black? Yeah, my goodness, my brain just kind of crapped out on me right there. He also played for Team Canada at the Olympic Games, where he had 1 assist in 5 games. Now, Team Canada, Olympics, that's a lot more of a higher level of play than the World Junior, so I definitely understand him only getting 1 assist in the 5-game sample, plus the fact that Team Canada wasn't really all too great anyway. There's a reason why you had all these other countries going out there and out-dueling the Canadians. But for all intents and purposes, Owen Power had a pretty good season. I mean, obviously you want to see the guy improve as much as he did in the NCAA, especially as a 1st overall talent, but just to have the certainty and just to say, okay, he did it. It's already there. He had the improvements, now he's a better player because of it. It's a lot more peaceful, I guess, in Sabres prospect development town, because you don't have that looming uncertainty that says, okay, he went back to Michigan. Does it mean that he's not going to sign here? Does it mean that he's going to have his development slowed down? We saw what happened last time. Erik Johnson was a 1st overall pick that went back to the NCAA, and he isn't like a number 1 superstar right now. The thing is, I think with Owen Power, there are a lot more projectable skills than Erik Johnson had when he was drafted 1st overall back in the mid-2000s. Sure, he was supposed to be a fantastic number 1 defender, but for Owen Power, I think the game is changing in a way that allows players like Power to excel tremendously. Big size, good mobility, very nice offensive instincts and tools. Owen Power, as his career goes on, is going to be a beast. And alongside of Rasmus Dahlin, or excuse me, not alongside, they both play left, behind Rasmus Dahlin, I guess you could say, there's going to be a very nice top 4 defense pairing right here in both of these players. Now, there is a question as to where you go from here. Because with Rasmus Dahlin, you have Samuelsson that is going to be also on his right side. They've been playing pretty all right together, so I think there's no real need to break them up. But for Owen Power, who is the player you play alongside of him? Do you play, let's say, Yoki Harju? Is he able to handle the minutes that Owen Power would be able to get at the NHL level? Because Owen Power, he's physically mature, he's mobile, etc. He could probably get, let's say, 18, 19, 20 minutes a night in his first full NHL season. Is Yoki Harju the guy that's going to be able to go out there and match those minutes? Or would you prefer the Sabres to go out there and fetch somebody else to fill in that Owen Power pairing role? Maybe a Chris Letang, for example, or maybe somebody else on the trade market that could be available too. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Firstly, about how Owen Power played in 2021-2022. Yeah, my mind is adjusted already to the next season's worth of play. Where do you think we are 1 year removed from Owen Power getting drafted? Where do you see him going in the future? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.